It's a pleasure to be with you, and I really love your business concept. You know, over the last few years, I have been teaching a subject called business model reinvention, and I've been teaching it all over the world. I've done hundreds of hours of research, and I'm basically an authority. I won't say I'm an expert, but I'm an authority on business model reinvention. And what I have found, which really was a shocker to me, is that your business model, which is also your profit model, is the way that you succeed or not. And that most businesses, according to a Harvard study, 80% of businesses have the wrong business model. Now, they may have it a little bit wrong, a medium amount wrong, or a huge amount wrong. But some companies, even like McDonald's, with 36,000 restaurants, got into serious trouble. And their board of directors sat the executives down in a boardroom in New York and said, change your blank, blank business model. This business model that you're trying to make work is not working. And so
Crazy.
the president of McDonald's about 2 or 3 years ago refused to do it. He said, "No, no, we'll just keep on trucking. We'll just keep on, and it'll things will come out." And they said, "Okay, fine, you're fired." And all the horses you rode in on. So they fired everybody, cleaned them out, brought in a whole new executive team at McDonald's, and said, "Now install a new business model." And he said, "Right on," and he did. And the sales which had gone down coincidentally 32% in the overall in the last
Wow.
year went up 32% in the following year with a new business model. And what you have, which is really exciting, is you have a great business model, and that is the essence of success in any business today. And so what you always do is you're constantly looking at your business model. You're sort of holding it up to the light. And as Peter Drucker said, the only question you ask is it working? Is it working? And if it's working, do more of it. It's sort of, I say it's sort of like a recipe. And
Yep.
I've spoken to more than 1,000 large companies over the years, and every one of them that is successful has a good recipe. So their business model helps them generate profits. It's almost like an automatic,
Machine.
yeah,
Yeah.
machine. And there's several parts in the business model which you have developed, and they are the product, they're the customer, they're the competition, they're the current market. There's about 10 parts which I teach. And every person, every time I've given that program, I get standing ovations from 1,000 people at every break. And they go out there and they send me stories of just revolutionizing their business by just simply holding up these different things to the light to
It's
make sure
awesome.
that they have the right business model. And you do. And yet you, the way that you've developed it, because I've been in real estate since 1971. I got my real estate license. And what I did primarily is I leased office buildings, leased office properties in downtown Vancouver. And I just knocked on doors all day, every day,
Wow.
looking for people who needed space or needed to get rid of space. And over time, I became very savvy about real estate. And so now here I am in Edmonton, and I realized I didn't know anything about real estate development. So I went down to the library, and as at that time we had libraries, I went down to the library and I checked out books on real estate written by experts, and book after book after book. And I read 3, 4, 5 hours a day and took notes. And then I went out. Now I could see the real estate market totally differently. I went out looking for a property to buy, and I found, after countless mistakes, I found a 5 acre piece of property in a small town outside of Edmonton, and it was a trailer home, a residential trailer park. And so I went to the owners and I said, "Would you be interested in selling your property?" And they said, well, they were older, and they said yes. Well, if it was the right price and right terms and everything else, and make a long story short, I ended up buying the property, and then I had to have find the money. I went to their lawyer, and the lawyer said, "I'll help you help them because they're older and they need to get out." We set a price of about $2 million on the property, and I'll allow you to tie up the property for a month, for 30 days, for $150 deposit. And I
Nice.
said, okay, I'll give you a $150 check, but please don't cash it because I don't have any money. And and they did, and I literally scrambled. I went everywhere. I spoke to everybody who had any money, and I finally found a large real estate development and management company. And I said, I've got this deal. I'd gotten Safeway and a major liquor store, a restaurant. I had it all leased out on paper, and I said, I've got this ready to go. I just need the money, and I'll sell you the property if you put in 100% of the money. I'll sell you the property in exchange for 25% of the property. And they said, all right, we'll check it out. And if what you say is true, then it's a good deal. And so they did. And they found that everything that I had done was exactly correct. And people say, well, how could you develop it? It was turned out to be a $5 million shopping center when it was finished. How could you develop a $5 million shopping center with no money? I said, well, I just read the books. I just got expert advice. I read the books and I did what the book said. And it was people, everybody who's successful in real estate was at one time not even in real estate, didn't know anything about real estate. And what they did is they learned. They learned, they practiced, they got feedback, which is what you do is you give people the tools. And the most important tools of all are mental tools, is your ability to think about the property and to think it through and to make decisions and then to correct the decisions. One of the most important things you need to do is be fast on your feet when you are in real estate because situations can change very quickly. And so what you've done here, and I read everything that you sent me, is really quite wonderful, Chris. I'm
I
extremely
appreciate
impressed.
that.
And if anybody who does not get involved with you once they've learned about your approach to the real estate business needs as we say, a whack upside the head. Uh,
Well, we're from New England and we're blunt and to the point. And so your comment there was a perfect kind of cap of what you of being blunt and to the point. A nice whack upside the head. That's perfect.
well,
Um, you know what's neat? As we, we teach no money. You found the money because the deal was good. You did say something to me before we started recording, and that was that you said when I did such and such, I was broke again. So there's some struggle stories there that I'd love the wicked smart listeners to hear. I'm sure, I'm guessing that
right.
you've gone through over the years.
Yes. Well, I started off. I didn't graduate from high school. I finished in the half of the class that makes the top half possible, and I left school and I got a job washing dishes. And it's absolutely amazing because I read so many biographies of people today who are really wealthy, and how many of them started off washing dishes
Yeah,
or
yeah.
mowing lawns, which I did, or digging ditches, or I once dug a well. Well digging is where you dig until you find water, and the bottom of the well starts to fill in. So I say you fail until you succeed, and then they fire you because they don't need you anymore. So you on to the next job. I worked in factories. I worked in on a ship in the North Atlantic. I did a lot of laboring jobs, and then I got into sales, and I didn't understand selling. I just knocked on doors. I just was a door knocker. And one day, and I still remember it, I asked one of the top salesman in our company. I said he was selling 10 times as much as anybody else, and he wasn't even working. He'd roll in around 9:30. He'd go for lunch. He'd roll out about 4:30. He was selling 10 times as much as anybody else. And I said, "What are you doing differently from me?" And he said, "Well, show me your sales presentation." And I said, "Well, I've heard about a sales presentation, but I've never seen one." Well, what do you say when you meet a client? He said, "You meet a customer." I said, "Well," and I was selling investments at that time, mutual funds. And I said, "Well, I tell them all about the mutual funds and how good it is." And how they said, "No, no, no, stop, stop." He said, "No, that's not how you sell. You sell by asking questions."
I
And
love it.
and uh, and you need to find out, is this a prospect or just a suspect? And then you ask more questions, and over time, and I could condense all my years, but I learned a lesson very early, and the rule is that listening builds trust, and trust is the foundation of all business dealings. is I just read another book. You see these books behind me. I just read a book recently, and it said that relationships are not an important thing. Relationships are everything. Wonderful use of words. Relationships are everything. So until you establish a relationship with your prospective client, nothing happens. And if you try to go faster, you will kill the sale. I used to teach in my seminars, I say, like a gun, you blam, you shoot yourself in the foot if you don't take the time to establish a relationship, which you do by asking questions and listening carefully to the answers, and then asking follow up questions. And only then, as you ask questions, listening builds trust. And Chris, that's one of the most important little lessons I ever learned. Listening builds trust. So, how do you listen? You ask questions and then take notes and then follow up. And some years ago, a friend of mine named Neil Rackham was hired by five of the biggest companies in America, and he wrote a book called Spin Selling. And what he did is did years of research. He interviewed something like 20, what is it, 55,000 customers,
Wow.
put them in front of a camera and just ask them. And at that time, companies like Xerox and IBM and so on, um, they were very good at selling. And the reason it turned out why they were very good at selling is that they had exclusive products. Is that if with like, for example, with Xerox, you either used a Xerox machine or you typed it by hand. I
Yeah.
mean, so when they went in and offered their Xerox machines, that was a choice: is type it by hand or and hire staff and everything else, or buy a Xerox machine. And so they thought they were kings of the world, and it turned out that what they had was an exclusive product. And as soon as their product came off of patent, which they always do, the Japanese rolled into the market with better machines at lower prices. And Xerox almost went bankrupt because now they couldn't, salespeople couldn't walk in and tell
Take
them
it.
what to
Yeah.
do. And yeah, and make it. So that's the most important thing. The one thing that lasts is the relationship. Your success, and I've read everything you've sent me, your success is based on building really high quality relationships and maintaining them, and then you do it again. So anyway, so I read the book. I built a relationship with these people. They're older couple. They're farm people. They bought this piece of land years ago, and I ended up buying the property, and I developed a shopping center, and uh, and then the president of the company, it was about he's worth about $750 million. He owned 200 companies, one of the smartest and best men I ever met in my life, Dr. Charles Allard. And he said, "Would you like to come and work for me as my personal assistant?" Well, it turned out he never had a personal assistant before, but he liked me. And I said, "Well, yes." He said, "Well, how much would you charge?" And so I did some research, and I came back and I charged him $150 a day. This was in the 70s, $150 a day. And I would send him a bill, and he would pay me. So it was better to do it that way than to be an employee for
Right.
tax reasons and so on. And so he gave me stuff, sort of like a dog owner throwing a stick. He would give me projects. At the beginning, he didn't know what he was doing. I didn't learn this till later because he never had an assistant, but he would give me a little task to do. And I teach graduating classes. If people say, "How can I be successful?" As a matter of fact, I just got a request to talk to a graduating class of the University of Alberta and do a seminar for them. And they want to know what do I do now I finished my business degree? What do I do to be successful? And the answer I say is really simple: is always ask for more responsibility. And
Mm.
that's what I did with I call him the doc, as I asked for more responsibility. And then when you get it, run with it, run with it, and do the job fast and do the job well. And so that's what I did. And there was a lot of competition. It's a large company. Um, and I was right next to God. And he was successful because that's what he did. Is he was an action oriented person, very quiet. He's a professional surgeon and so on. So every time he gave me a job, I took it and ran with it. The other people, he would give them work to do, and they would do it when they got around to it. You ever heard
Or
of? You've heard
minimally.
about the you hear of the round to it that they used to hand out at seminars. It says to it, and it's a little round thing. So here's what you need to get started. It's a round to it. Now you say you're going to get around to it. Well, now here's a round to it. So anyway,
That's funny.
so I would take the job and run with it, and then I would come back to him, and he was brilliant, and I would say, what about this and what about that, and he'd say, well, do this and do that, and don't do this and don't do that, and he would sort of school me, if you like, and I made him in the 70s, I made him about $25 million by
Wow.
annexing property, developing property, building properties, and then he sold his entire business and contracted into a smaller business where he didn't need me. So I started to work on my own. And in real estate, I have now developed, I was working this out, more than $500 million worth of real estate.
That's
I
amazing.
just sort of backed into it. And my last project was a project in Fort Lauderdale. And it wasn't just me, but I was able to put it all together because I knew this person who I had a relationship with, and that person and that person. And then they had friends who had the money. And we took a piece of property. There was one piece of property which we had tied up, and we bought four other properties around it to create a land assembly. And with that land assembly, we put together a project. And I happen to know, because I'm the trustee of a Heritage Foundation in Washington, and on the board was a man who was named, his name was Mr. Fort Lauderdale. He had literally developed the whole city over the
Wow.
past 25 or 30 years. And his wife, Marilyn, a wonderful woman, he died of a heart attack. But I went to her and I said, can you help me develop this property? She said, well, I'll introduce you to the architects, the engineers, my staff, and so on. So we went into Fort Lauderdale, my friends and a partner, and uh, they opened the doors for us. And coming back to what I said a minute ago, relationships are everything. And by the time we were finished, we had bought all five properties, got them completely assembled, put together an architect's planning for it, and we got 100% approval from the city council for the complete development. And anybody who's been in real estate knows that the words 100% approval are
Right.
what you die and go to heaven with, because
Especially
no
right
one,
away. Yeah.
yeah, they loved it. They said this is a great project. This will be really enhance the city. It was right in the center of the town, and the city hall was across the street. And we took the value of that property. It was I guess 20-30 million dollars. We tied it up, um, down payment now, pay later, and so on. And we ended up, when we finished the property, it had a value of $330 million on
That's
paper, and
amazing.
then we sold it. And so we sold it to another company that was an even bigger company that could take it to the next step. And in real estate, what you do is the first step is you acquire the property. Second step is you get a design approval, and third step is you get the money, and then you start to build. And that's what I did with the dock right at the beginning. Is each step of that we did I did everything to put it together, and then the dock came in with the money and the connections. So that's what a person can do if they have your help and your direction. What you teach them is basically a step-by-step process, and I call it a recipe. You teach them
Oh,
a recipe for real estate success in business, and you follow the recipe, and you don't goof around with it. You follow the recipe, and it works. It's sort of like a really good recipe in the kitchen. You follow the recipe, it works, and the dish is delicious every time. And it's the same thing with you. And so when I see what you do and how you teach people, I think that's absolutely wonderful. I think a person, if I was younger, um, I would line up at your door tomorrow,
I
because
appreciate that.
well, what you do is you save people. Everybody wants to be financially independent. Actually, in their heart of hearts, they want to be rich, but financial independence will be good, and they want to be financially independent. So how do you do it? Well, throughout the ages, Real estate is the answer. Now, I've made a lot of money in other things. I own 40% of a hotel, which I backed into because of relationships and so on. And I own other things, other businesses. But my main success has come from real estate.
Hmm.
The others have been helpful, but what you do is you make money that you put into real estate, and you make money from real estate, which you put into more real estate. And as you do it, you get smarter. And if you're really smart, you get involved with someone like you who will save you years of hard work in achieving the same goal. And I am the top, believe it or not, I am the top time management author in the world today. My books have sold 2.5 million copies in 51 languages on time management. So I get booked over and over again to speak on personal productivity, and I'm really adamant about time. And what you do is you save people so much time in achieving the same results. Because when you lose money, you don't lose money, you lose life. You lose the amount of life that it took you to accumulate that money. And that life is irretrievable. When you're
Hmm.
young, you don't even think about it. As you get a little bit older, you think, oh my God, is I just lost 3 years of work because I took the wrong turn and I did this when I should have done that.
Yeah.
And what I found very early is learn from the experts. And if you listen to my stuff, I teach this. Learn from the experts. Go to the most qualified people. Go to people who've done it already and learn from them and follow their guidance. And the wonderful thing is experts will help you. Experts will have a vested interest in helping you to achieve the same thing they've achieved. It's wonderful. You and I, when you're successful, you just love to help other people be successful. It's just like it's a great thing.
No, I
Um,
agree. I
yeah.
agree. I gotta say it's too. It's just I'm humbled and I'm super excited to be even chatting with you about this. And thank you for your stamp of approval like that. Only because I listened to I don't know how many hours and hours and hours, hundreds of hours of your stuff when I was growing through my college and career and going broke once and all of that. And so this is just a pleasure. I have a question for you about the recipe that you were talking about. So, what do you say to the wicked smart listeners who, okay, Chris, I hear it over and over again. I see the success, but they have a belief issue. Because if they didn't have a belief issue, they'd be working with us. So, what do you say to them? And they might be in corporate, even worse, right? So, I don't know. What are your thoughts for them?
Well, when I began to study and speak on this subject, I found that there are a series of laws that largely determine human success or failure. And I found that I've eventually identified 32 laws. And if you have listened to my Psychology of Achievement program,
Absolutely.
is it's laced throughout with the various laws. My book, Maximum Achievement, I just got a letter from a wealthy person yesterday saying that this book made him wealthy and it's best book he ever read in his life. And I've heard that thousands of times
Mm,
because what it does is it gives you all the recipes for success. So the first law, in the sense that very simple, but going back to prehistory, back to Aristotle. Aristotle was a student of Plato, and Plato was the student of Socrates. And Aristotle established his academy outside of Athens in about 350 BC, and he began to think about life. And he determined that we do not live in a life determined by gods and random chance and accidents and so on. And he taught something which made him the greatest philosopher of all time, if he'd only done that, but he's done so many things. But what he did is he taught what is called the Aristotelian principle of causality, which is the law of cause and effect. The law of cause and effect says that there is a reason for everything. We don't live in a random world controlled by gods throwing lightning bolts from the heavens, which is what people thought. He said we live in a world guided by order. So if you want to achieve something, coming all the way forward to your business, if you want to achieve something, then you find out how other people have done it, like a recipe, and you do the same thing. and you do it over and over until you master the recipe. And then you get the same results they did, cause and effect. And it's not a miracle. And it's absolutely predictable. I mean, if you said, if you said to someone, if you go out in your front yard and um, plant grass and then water it, grass will grow. We will say we must be crazy. Everybody knows that. Well, if you do a complicated thing like buying real estate and doing the things that you teach, then you're going to have tremendous success in real estate. People say, "Oh, that's not possible." Blah blah blah. Of course it is. It's not a miracle. It's cause and effect. So going back to the friend that I met when I was struggling, and he said, "Well, when I was coming out of school, I went to work for this company, and they trained me in selling. And selling has a series of steps, which you've heard from me. And if you follow these 7 steps, which I've now taught to 2 million, 3 million salespeople, follow these 7 steps, then you will make sales. You'll be successful. And if you don't, you won't. And so, therefore, here are the 7 steps, and you're familiar with them. And so, same with management. I just got a request to do a talk on management for graduate students. It's the same thing. How do you become a leader? They want to know how to be a leader. And I say, well, it's very simple. Is first of all, take responsibility and don't blame other people. And second of all, get results, because everything is results. The word results is everything. And and then just work your behind off, uh, because to be successful, average people work 8 hours a day. Whoever said that you're supposed to work 8 hours a day? And there's no rich people that work 8 hours a day. I was listening to I was listening to this interview. I was driving along listening, and they were interviewing an impresario named um, he's produced songs. He's produced more than 100 bestsellers, and he was being interviewed by one of the people that we know. It'll come to me. Names kind of go around in my mind. Anyway, he was being interviewed, and he said, "Well, what do you do in your spare time?" And I still remember this. I almost pulled off the road, and he said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you're very successful. What do you do in your spare time?" He said, "I don't know anybody who works less than 6 days. I don't know any successful people who work less than 6 days a week." And up to that time, I was working 6 and 7 days a week, and I was thinking, I must have it wrong, because I mean, you look at all these successful people. No, successful people work 6 days a week or more. When you're starting off, you work 7 days a week for about 7 years. It takes about 7 years to be successful, and the first 2 or 3 years will be really a struggle. Like you said, you went bankrupt. Well, join the club. Everybody went bankrupt, and you didn't necessarily go bankrupt and declare and sell your furniture on the sidewalk. What happened is you just ran out of money, and you had to start over again, and you
Right.
cut back and everything else. And what you do is you learn things. I had a very good friend, very wealthy now, lives in Palm Springs. He's retired, and what he did is, when he was in his early 20s, he and 2 other people started a business, and the business boomed for a little while, and then it went bankrupt, and he lost everything. And the three broke up, and he went back to live with his mother. And he tells the story that he sat down with a piece of paper, and he wrote down everything he learned from this situation. And I've encouraged people to do this: is
Yeah.
what are all the lessons that you learn? Lessons about money, lessons about people, lessons about the market, lessons about banking, and so on. Write them down. Write them down. If you don't write them down, you don't capture your lessons, you will forget them. They'll just kind of flitter away like cigarette smoke in a large room. So what you do is you write them down and write them and review them. And so he wrote these down, and he made his little lesson book. And from then on, he reviewed his lessons. What did I learn? There's only 4 ways, I say, to change your life. You can do more of some things, or you can do less of others. You can start something new, or you can stop something completely. So those are the 4. And I used to teach this I have a coaching program, which I taught for 7 years. I worked with business owners, you do. I worked with business owners for 7 years, and they would come and spend a full day with me once every 3 months. And we had do it in a group. And then they would go At the end of the day, they would develop a goal sheet, and then they would go and 3 months later they would come back and we would review their goals. And it was astonishing. I said, I'll guarantee that you'll double your income and double your time off within 12 months, or there'll be no charge. And in 7 years, I never had to give a refund because
Sweet.
many people double their income in a week after the first program. And by doing some of the things that you know, because you've listened to my programs, writing down goals, managing your time, getting organized, focusing on high priorities, and so on. And so you do these things, and by the law of cause and effect, the Aristotelian principle of causality, which makes you sound very smart. Oh, yes, yes, that's what Aristotle said, as I recall. Any- anyway, and so what
That's
happened?
awesome.
Yeah, it's so simple. And so
Brian, I would love you to share. Sorry, I would love you to share because I want to respect your time. I'd love you to share wherever you want these guys to go and find you, or find more about you, or find courses, because you have so many. I mean, gosh, 70 plus books, etc. Where's the best place these days to find you or learn more about your programs? Not that they wouldn't know about you already, but learn more about your current stuff.
well, I often give a little mini talk, and it's I talk about the golden triangle, and the golden triangle of success. And number one step in the golden triangle. And I've read the biographies of 1,000 or 2,000 successful people, which, by the way, I found that rich people read the biographies of other rich people, and then they get rich. Da da. And what do? Is they learned what those people did, and they do the same thing. People said, how could you develop several $100 million worth of real estate starting with nothing? I said, I read the books. I read the books, you idiot. It's all written down. It's like a recipe. And so and then and the first time you do it, it won't be that great, but you keep doing it, it becomes better and better. So the first point of the triangle was accept responsibility. Nothing happens until you say, I am responsible for my life, nobody else. And I don't blame my parents, and I don't blame my boss, and I don't blame the mistakes that I've made. I am responsible. I chose to do this. Wonderful thing in our lives is we are free to choose. Wonderful book by Milton Friedman. The second point is I discovered goals. And I remember discovering goals. I read an article and it said, if you want to be successful, you have to have goals and you have to write them down. I read this in 1969. And I still remember I was sleeping on the floor of a friend's little one room apartment because I had no money, broke again. And so I took a scrap of paper and I wrote down 10 goals. And I promptly lost both the magazine and the goals. And within 1 month, my life had changed forever, and I couldn't believe it. I made more money. I had more contacts. Within a year, I had people working for me on commission in 6 countries, 95 people. I was earning more money than I ever dreamed possible. Um, it was wonderful. I still remember. I was sort of walking around almost like I was in a daze. I was so successful because I wrote down goals. Now the reason I say that is I have a website called briantracy.com. On the website, you go there and we give you a free um, program on how to set and achieve goals.
Awesome.
And it's no charge. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of things that are free on there. But the first thing is goals. Is if you want to be successful, you have to have goals. So just go there, briantracy.com, and download the goal program and fill it out and decide
Love it.
what you want and write it down. And that'll change your life forever, as it did for me. And the third part, the third part is, as you know, if you read my material, is personal development, continuous learning. Is the rich people. I did a program last year. I wrote it all out and into a book form. It's the habits of millionaires and billionaires and how they got that way. And one of the habits is that they read in their field a minimum of an hour a day,
Mm,
sometimes 2 hours. Warren Buffett reads 5 hours a day and is not
crazy.
only one of the richest people in the history of the world, but he's also one of the most respected. And Warren Buffett, I just downloaded an article. It's on my stuff behind me there. And he was asked, what is your secret to success? And I don't know if you've read this, um, but it's really neat. He said, my secret to success is really simple. I just say no to everything. If it is not the two or three most important things in my life, I just say no. And so if you want to be successful, just say no, and say no to anything that is not in harmony with you achieving the success that you want. Watching television is not going to make you successful. There's rich people and there's poor people. Rich people watch television maybe an hour a day and they watch it to unwind later in the day. Poor people watch television 5 to 7 hours a day. If you go into the home of poor people, what do you find? In the center of the family is the biggest television they can afford. If
Mhm.
you go to the home of rich people, what do you find? Books everywhere. I was had someone at my seminar some time ago, a very nice man, and he said, I sell real estate. I sell expensive homes. He said, and first thing that the woman asked is, can I see the kitchen and the living room? And the first thing the man asked is, where's the library? Where's the den? I want to know where I can put my books because all the people who can afford the homes I sell read all the time.
Amazing. And for the ones for the listeners that aren't seeing this on video, because it'll go both places. For those of you that want to see, you might want to go to YouTube and check this video out because Brian Brian's office that he's sitting in is surrounded by books, and where there's not a bookcase, there's a stack of books. So there's books everywhere all around you. So you don't just say it. You got it. You just immerse yourself in it. I love it, and I love that you shared your site, Brian. We'll put that in the show notes. I want everybody to make sure they get to briantracy.com because there's a plethora of information. Here we are in my family anyway, third generation. My son Nick and my son-in-law Zach, who you just met, they listen to your stuff. I mean, this is you've affected generations and generations and generations, and we are super super grateful for that, and super grateful to have you here. And I understand you'll be coming to our upcoming event to have the community really get to know you better. So I couldn't say that I appreciate it enough. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
And I appreciate you. I think what you're doing is wonderful. My little thing about cause and effect. It sounds so simple, but what you have done is you have developed a recipe, and once the person has developed the recipe, then anyone else can do it. It's like if Einstein or Newton, Sir Isaac Newton, if they develop a principle, once the principle has been developed, I, I, I came across something which I wrote, and a publisher asked me to write a book on it, which I did. I've written now 90 books. But this one observation was once a piece of knowledge has been developed, it never goes away. Um, it's there forever. And so once you have developed a piece of knowledge and written it down, then generations can use that piece of knowledge. Once you have put together a system, which you have put together, a recipe, then other people can use it and
Right.
use it over and over again. And when you use it, you get better at it. I always say you don't get better at, you don't get worse at something by doing it. You don't get worse at something by doing it. I have a friend, really neat guy. He's a professor of literature at the University of Southern California in Sacramento, and I was talking to him at a meeting, and he said people come up to me and he said they said I want to be successful as a writer, and I said so I give them the advice, and what the advice is, just write. If you want to be a writer,
Yeah.
just write is sit down and write a page a day, write an hour a day, but just write. And he said, you don't get worse at it by doing it. And
Love it.
eventually you'll get better and better. And I had already written several books. So I really appreciated that. The critical thing is just write. You say you want to be a writer? Well, write. You can tell what you want by looking at what you do. You want to be wealthy?
Absolutely.
You want to be wealthy? Then follow your system. Work it smart. I like that. Is follow the system and do it over and over until you master it. I
Love it.
learned from Peter Drucker, as well as from others, is that there's a 7 year cycle to be successful. You start off the first 2 to 3 years, you struggle. Um, the next couple of years, you recover and you start to grow. And then in the next 2 years out of the seven, you strike it rich. You really start to make a lot of money. It takes 7 years. And I read that and I listened to it and I heard people say it. And I said, well, no damn way. It's going to take me 7 years. I want to do it faster. And
Yeah,
so I
always.
threw my whole heart into it, and it took 7 years.
That message in and of itself, I literally am going to repeat at our next event, which is next week, because that's power. There's nuggets throughout this whole chat, of course, because you're a plethora of knowledge. But that I love the 7 year track so that people manage your expectations. Right? It's awesome.
Yes.
Um, Brian, thank you again. Thank you, and I respect your time. It's been a pleasure to hang out with you, and I can't wait to have you at our event coming up, the Summer of Deals. So thanks again, buddy.
I'm very much looking forward to working with you. I respect you and I admire you an enormous amount. So we'll talk again.
Thank you, Brian. Be safe.
Thank you, Chris. You too.